Welcome to the Work Positive Podcast with your host, executive coach, and culture architect, Dr. Joey Faucette. Discover strategies and tactics that work positive as Dr. Joey talks with industry leaders who create a positive work culture that attracts top talent and reduces team turnover. Discover how you can create a work positive culture that increases productivity and profits. Here's your host, Dr. Joey.
Work Positive Nation, if I told you that starting today, you could turn your workplace into a WOWplace, I bet you'd have one or two reactions. Okay, let's see how right I am here. One would be, where do I sign up? And the other would be, yeah, right. Okay, so you people, where do I sign up? We love you. You're our people. You're a part of Work Positive Nation, right? You're a part of WOWplace Nation. Here's what we want you to do. You keep listening because you're going to love this podcast, right? Now, you yeah, right people. Hey, here's a challenge for you. I want you to listen to this entire podcast and I dare you to find at least one action you can take starting today to turn your workplace into a WOWplace. And if you can't find one action from this podcast to turn your workplace into a WOWplace, I will refund every dime you paid for listening to this podcast. Now, seriously, you're going to get some great tips today because my guest on this episode of the Work Positive Podcast knows how to turn your workplace into a WOWplace. In fact, she wrote a book about it. And not only did she write a book about it, she's got a website. So while you're listening, scroll over to thewowplace.com. And oh, by the way, you can order the book there. Who knows? She might even sign it for you if you ask her pretty please, because she's all about turning your workplace into a WOWplace. How do we do that? Today's guest is going to tell me, you, and all the world. Sandy Geroux is in the Work Positive house. Sandy, welcome to the Work Positive Podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Joey. I'm so thrilled to be here because this is exactly the kind of thing I love talking about, coaching people about, and just really spreading the word that even for you, oh yeah, people, there are things you're going to learn that you can do today that will turn that in from an oh yeah, right to an oh yeah, right.
That's it. To turn your workplace into a WOWplace. I don't know about you, Sandy, but man, whether it's Gallup or SHRM or whoever's doing the survey, every survey I read about American workers prior to the pandemic was like 85% of them are disengaged. And then we celebrated the pandemic by sponsoring the Great Resignation. Oh, don't you love that?
That was awesome.
Upping and quitting jobs. And it's because so many, at least that's what they say. Of course, the Great Resignation is morphing into the Great Regret now, right? Ooh, I left that job. This new job's no better. And it's because the workplaces have yet to become WOWplaces. We're all about, first of all, attracting top talent here in Work Positive Nation. So how do I turn my workplace into a WOWplace and attract top talent, Sandy?
Well, one of the biggest things that you can do, and it doesn't matter the size of your organization, because you can come from an organization of thousands and thousands and thousands of people, but who's doing the hiring? One person is going to be the one who's going to be doing the hiring and or supervising that person. So think about how you can be authentically you all the time. We are always on stage. You know, I live in the Tampa area right now, but for 20 years, I lived in the Orlando area here in Florida. Yes, I lived in the house of the mouse. And one of the things you learn when you live in the house of the mouse is that when you are anywhere except in your private home, and now not on Zoom in your private home, you are on stage.
Yep.
People are looking at who you are, how you treat people, what you do, how you behave, what you say. And you know what? I'm a speaker. That's what I do, a speaker trainer. And one of the greatest compliments somebody ever gave me was they said one time, Sandy, you're exactly the same on stage as you are off stage.
Imagine
and I thought that was one of the best things anybody could ever say to me, because we can't put on airs anywhere. You can't pretend to be one person and then when you hire them and they get to the workplace, now they find out, whoa, big surprise. That's not who they are at all. So I actually found my very own virtual assistant who's working with me now for almost 5 years because she had hired me for a program several times. And then when she was an executive assistant and she got laid off from her job after 29 years.
Ooh.
And when she went to, it just coincidentally happened that she had been contacting me to do something for another group. And so when I needed an assistant and I found out that she had been laid off, I said, are you looking for full-time work or can you be a VA for me? Within 2 weeks, we were working together and we love each other. And it's because she knew who she was getting into the workplace with. So just be you. And here's one more story. Before the pandemic, I did a program for a hospital group. And when I was there, it was a good-sized group. The gentleman who hired me told me, Sandy, I'm going to be opening up a new hospital soon. And he said, all these people are saying to me, you're taking me with you when you open that new hospital, right? You're taking me with you, right? Because, I don't care what I have to do. I almost don't care what you pay me. I just want to work for you. And we started asking them during lunchtime. I got curious. Why do they want to work for him so badly? Yeah. So I started talking to people, and here's what I heard. He respects us and asks for our input, and then he actually takes it. Oh, what a concept.
You mean he doesn't just ask and then do what he was going to do anyway?
Exactly. It's like, when people are like, just giving lip service to it, but he actually did that. He also, they said he knows his stuff, but he doesn't act like he's better than everybody else.
Wow.
And he has a great sense of humor. And I caught up with that gentleman a few years later at another luncheon where I was doing the closing keynote. He was winning an award at the luncheon, and he stopped and said, Sandy, take a picture of my phone. I got to show you the results of when the hospital opened. They had over 27,000 applications, over 1,700 hiring interviews for 803 jobs.
Wait a minute. 27,000 applications for 803 jobs. Okay, all you people who say, yeah, right, did you catch those numbers?
Yep.
Authenticity makes all the difference in the world. So it's not just talent recruitment and dating someone hard to get them to attract as top talent. It's who you are inside. It's becoming a consistent walk and talk match, authentic person. That's how you do it. So
and it helps you tap into your networks because they know who you are and they are very willing to say, you got to come and work here. This is a great place to work. So you be you and tap into the talent that you already know, the people, the relationships, and it will work for you.
Oh, absolutely. And, so many people say, oh, nobody wants to work today, or, people younger than us, because we're boomers, right? The millennials don't want to work. I like that. Malarkey.
It is malarkey.
Love, respect, authenticity, those kinds of core values form and shape who you are and the way you interact with people in the workplace. That's how you attract top talent and transform your workplace into a wow place, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, Sandy, so I get them to come to work with me. I get 27,000 applications or 803 positions, right? And so I'm attracting them quite well. Now what do I do once I get them?
Well, part of it also, again, that authenticity, you've got to be who you said you were going to be. So they can't get there and see a big surprise. But here's a really big thing. Be extremely clear on what you expect them to do when they get there. You have to put in the job description the things that they're going to be expected to do. So, for example, let me tell you something I did wrong. When I hired my first virtual assistant, I hired her because she was a friend and a friend of we all knew each other. We loved each other. And we thought, that would make a really great relationship. We really like each other. So I hired her. And I had told her a little bit about, I want you to do some standard VA things, virtual assistant things. But I also wanted her to be able to investigate new technology. I didn't have the time to do it, but when I found something I wanted to try, I wanted her to try it out. I wasn't clear on that. She was not comfortable trying new technology, and it was one of the biggest things I really wanted other than those traditional things. So at least half the job was investigating new things. Well, I wasn't clear. And then I made the second mistake and I left her alone too long. I'm kind of a hands-off leader. I don't want to micromanage anybody. I expect when I tell you to do something or ask you to do something, you're just going to go and do it. But if you're not enjoying it and you don't like it and you're not good at it, and then I use the laissez-faire leadership style, which, by the way, is the least effective, laissez-faire being French, of course, for leave alone. You leave them alone, they feel like you've abandoned them. So needless to say, within 3 months, we decided we weren't a good fit. Now, thankfully, we love each other enough. We're still good friends, but she wasn't a good fit. I didn't hire for the talent I needed. I hired because she was a friend. And then I didn't make it clear what I wanted, and then I abandoned her. And so don't do that.
That's what's not to
Please
do.
don't. Just be very clear and then check in with them, especially now in the virtual environment. You need to check in once in a while. How are you doing? Do you have the tools you need? Do you like the work? Is it what you expected? What can I do to serve you better? See, we have to flip our mindsets as leaders. They're not serving us. They can't serve us unless we serve them first. So if we do that, if we serve them and we make sure they have all the tools they need and that their expectations are being met, and we keep asking them, what do you need? What do you want? What can I do? That's how you keep them. And the other thing is, right away, right from the start, you have got to make them feel like part of the team.
Wow. You got
I've
to
talked to
onboard
people who told me they go into their office right for the first day, and the person who's supposed to meet them and greet them is an hour late. And it's like, well, you know, person you were supposed to meet isn't here yet. So just kind of cool your heels in the waiting room here. And, you know, and they'll be in shortly. And then when they get in, they're like, well, if somebody had told me I was supposed to do that, maybe I would have been here on time. And then they get to their office or they don't have an office. Oh, wait, here's a closet. And here's a desk, right? Sit there till we clean out an office. Or here's a desk and here's but there's no computer. Or here's a computer, but you don't have the login and the password. It's like, well, did you even know I was coming?
Or we're waiting on your furniture to get here, right?
Waiting on your furniture, your laptop, all the things you need to do your job. We were coming a month ago, but we didn't care enough to make you feel welcome on the day you got here.
So,
and
Sandy,
it's so often still.
Yeah, it sounds like we need to prepare a little bit. We need to prepare position descriptions. We need to prepare space and onboard people as well. And virtual space preparation is just as important. So what I hear you saying is it boils down to relationships. We have to be ready to love and respect these people as a part of our team and to engage them at a clearly defined level so that we're maximizing their potential and their talents. And is it okay to ask Sandy, hey, what do you like to do beyond what's in this position description?
Absolutely. That's one of the things I talk about big time is we need to tap into the hidden talents and interests that they have too. You know, everybody talks about having to maximize their workforce, and yet they never bother doing things to find out what else their current workforce might be able to do. And that workforce, one of the number one thing, by the way, that attracts people to a new workplace is to a workplace is the ability to develop a career path. You see, they don't want to just get in at a job or an entry-level job. They want to know, I'll get in, I'll work. See, all this malarkey that, like you said before about, they don't want to work. Nonsense. They do want to work. They don't mind putting in their time. But first of all, they want to know what they're putting their time in for. And they've watched too many of their parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles who, give 25, 30 years to a company only to the first time there's a problem, you're gone, you're laid off.
Right.
It's ridiculous. They don't want that to happen and then know that they've been here at all this time and haven't learned one thing that will help them create a lifestyle for themselves. So they want a career path. They want to work. And here's the thing. The big difference between the new generation and the old is they will have very little tolerance for being treated badly, which we put up with and never should have.
That's right.
When we were younger, but they won't. You sometimes get one day. I just heard a horror story recently. Somebody walked in. They were treated so badly on the first day. They walked out, turned in their badge, and never came back.
Well, Sandy, I don't blame them. I mean, if you're treated poorly day one, good for you for figuring it out day one, that you were dated hard, lied to, or maybe the person was just wrong. Do what you need to do in order to find that place where you can become your best self with a career path, because there's no division between professional and personal. It's you.
Right.
So you give expression to your best self at work, where you spend 70% of your waking hours, right? So Absolutely. I think we're going through an amazing transformation right now from the workplace to the WOWplace, right? And I call it the great redefinition.
I love that. Yes.
Yeah, we're redefining work. By the way, Work Positive Nation, Sandy Geroux is my guest on this episode of the Work Positive Podcast. Flip on over to the WOWplace.com right now. Look at all the great resources she's got there as we continue our conversation. Okay, Sandy, I know you have a systems background.
Yes, I do.
There are some companies that do a great job of measuring culture. You know, employee engagement, satisfaction, these kinds of things, as well as on the customer side of things. There are others who are like, you ask them, how do you measure your culture? They're like, what? Measure culture? Well, how do you do that? So from your systems background, how can you measure culture and identify those gaps so that you can turn your workplace into a WOWplace?
It's funny. You mentioned the systems background. And yes, I do have a big systems background. I'm a former systems analyst, business systems consultant.
Sure.
And we can look at all the numbers that we want. But I think one big thing that's missing from the numbers is what you talked about earlier, the relationships, the people. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel when you walk down the halls or get on a Zoom meeting? For me, it's all about, do I hear laughter between the people? Yep. Do I see respect between the people? Do I not walk into the grocery store and hear the cashier talking about another person behind their back to the bagger? You know, it's like in front of the customers. Hello? Yeah. What are you doing? You know, and I don't want to work there, because if they're not focusing on how the relationships are between the people and telling them, here are some behavioral standards. We will never talk about each other or any problem in front of a customer ever.
That's right.
Behavioral standards. You need to have these standards of how they're supposed to behave when they're out. You know, I have a friend who, again, worked at Disney, and one of his big points is don't bring backstage on stage. Oh. You can't be on stage, and you are when you're at work there, and doing things that you should only be doing backstage. He tells a funny story one time about how Cinderella was in the big show at the castle and all that, but he went down, at Disney, they have all these walkways underneath the ground. That's how the cast members get to all the different places. They never are walking to their places above ground, right? Sure. And he went backstage underground and saw Cinderella smoking a cigarette. Well, she'd never smoked that cigarette on stage, but holy cow, she wasn't. So, I measure it not with the numbers. Yeah, of course, you need to look at employee engagement. You need to look at customer loyalty, retention, sales, profits, all those things. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the biggest indicators is, how much pride do they take in their appearance? How much pride do they take in their workspace? You can see that even virtually. Is their workspace a mess on the camera, when you're looking at it? So virtually, did they at least halfway dress up for a meeting, even if you're only on a virtual meeting?
From the waist up anyway, right?
Yeah, there you go. Put your pants on,
Yeah, that's right. We don't care if you're wearing yoga pants. Just look good.
Yeah, we don't care. Just, but from here up, we can see that. So it's huge.
It is. And I love what you're talking about, setting some behavioral expectations. I mean, that grocery store, I don't even want to go buy a loaf of bread from them, right? Because it's just a toxic work environment. That negativity sloughs off on you. I love what you're saying about devising systems, and numbers and digital systems and online systems are all important. Yeah. But in order to really get the je ne sais quoi, it's so hard to get to through online resources. Yeah. We, in our company, instead of doing, everybody wants to send a survey for a 360 review. Oh, it's time to do our 360 reviews. Let's send all these surveys. Okay, that's wonderful. You just click.
Right.
If you do a survey about that survey method, you discover that the recipients of that survey are just kind of going, well, nobody's going to pay attention to this. Da, 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 da. So in our company, what we do is we work with the person on whom this 360 review is being done. Who do you want to interview? You want us to interview? What are the questions you want us to ask? And then, hey, Sandy, we actually sit down and talk to a person in real time, live.
Holy mackerel, what a concept.
Back in the day, we used to do it, get on an airplane, go someplace, but now we can do it on Zoom, so we can do a lot more of them. But I mean, there's so much depth and color to these relationships that you can discover. And the leaders that we use this method with just zoom, 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 and accelerate. So I appreciate what you're saying there about, those are important, measure them in the ways that are now typical and traditional. But hey, let's keep the human dynamic. And we're back to the authenticity and doing what you say you're going to do, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Sandy, what are some of the challenges that you see most common out there among companies that are seeking to turn their workplace into a wow place?
Well, I think the biggest challenge, again, is the human one. This existed before COVID, but it has been amplified now since COVID. That connection. Who worked, he was the manager of the facilities at a very, very large resort with multiple locations, and he was in charge of all of them. So if a door needed fixing, light bulbs need changing, anything needed fixing, that was his group. So of course you can imagine he had a lot of young millennial workers. Now this guy was a baby boomer, young millennial workers, and all these people, you can't get these people to connect or engage or work. He had no problem at all. Why? Because he treated them like people and he got to know them, every one of them. He would go out and visit when nothing was going on, just say, hi, how you doing? What's going on, right? Well, when he retired, they asked him to train his replacement. And when he did that, he said, okay, the biggest thing I can tell you is these are a great group of guys. They will go to the wall for you. Just get to know who they are. Get to know them. Let them get to know you. Well, he left, thought everything was fine. Not even a year later, he's getting a call from the new manager. What do you mean these guys will go to the wall for you? They have to pull teeth to get them to do anything. And blah, and like,
oh, man.
My friend was like, holy mackerel. And he still kept in touch with some of them. So he got in touch with them and said, what's going on? And here's what they said, which was a huge eye opener to us baby boomer types. They said, well, he never calls us unless he needs something. And if he doesn't care about us, why should we care about him? You see, look at the mindset flip. The baby boomer generation and all the ones, up to that point, even, Gen X after that, we were glad if our boss didn't call us and ask for anything, right? You can just leave me alone, let me do my job, right?
Yeah.
We took that as a good thing. They do not. They take, you're not calling them or contacting them unless you need something. I mean, that was their job. You call me when you need something. No, nowadays, if you don't call me when you don't need something, you don't care about me as a person. And that's the mindset flip that we have to do. People want to be treated as people first and employees second. And it doesn't matter how good a job you think you're doing. Oh, I'm a great manager. I don't bother them unless I need something. Bother them, please. Caring, compassion. Ask them about their lives, their selves. You don't have to have a 3-hour conversation, but a 30-second, 1 minute. How you doing? I heard that your mom was sick. I heard that your child was. Show them you care about them as people.
Oh, yeah. Just a simple question like, hey, is your child sleeping through the night yet? I mean, that question right there.
You again, Dr. Faucette.
Yeah.
Dr. Joey. Yeah, here we go.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Yeah. Just asking that question. Hey, is your kid sleeping through the night yet?
Yes.
Something like that just speaks into their story and shows interest in, shall we say, a human being rather than a human doing, right?
Perfect. Yes.
So
they are a human being. Let's treat them like that. One of my WOWplace rules is be human, not humanoid. You can look like a human. If you don't show any kind of emotion or compassion or anything in the workplace, how in the world do they know you're human and you care about them?
Yeah, there's our episode title for this episode, Work Positive Nation. Be human instead of humanoid.
That's it.
I love it. Sandy Geroux, thewowplace.com. Turn your workplace into a wow place. That's what we're talking about today. Sandy, Work Positive Nation always wants to know from my guest one action they can take starting today. You know, all you people who said, yeah, right. One action you can take starting today to turn your workplace into a wow place. What would you say is that one action?
The one action is really what we were talking about now. Make those connections. Mm-hmm. Even if they're working remotely, people feel so disconnected, and it's amplified when they feel disconnected from their leaders.
Yeah.
So if you're a leader, start connecting with your people. Just call them once in a while. Make a Zoom meeting or set up a regular thing with them. Once a month, we're going to do this. And we're not going to, there's one company that they set up what they call connections meetings once a quarter because they're spread all over the world. So whether we're in COVID or not, it doesn't matter. They're not going to ever get together. And they realize they don't know anything about each other. And so they set up their first connections meeting. And the only rule is no work talk. You have to talk about only personal things. And so their very first meeting, they had a question, how did you come to work here at this organization? Well, you can do it any way you want. Just talking, you could do a PowerPoint. Some people did PowerPoints. They put the U.S. map up. Oh, I was born here and I moved there. And it's just amazing to see their journey and get a load of this. A woman who was in Malaysia, when the woman who was talking about, I was born in this state and that state, she stopped her and said, whoa, wait a minute. You can go from state to state just like that. Don't you have to tell someone you're coming? Don't you have to get permission? They can't go from state to state or place to place in Malaysia without permission. She had no idea. And the people in the U.S. were shocked that, oh my gosh, look at the freedoms we take for granted. A thing coming out of such a personal nature, people were saying, I had no idea you were going through that, or I thought I was all alone. I'm not alone. And the relationships you can create, and the leaders must be on those meetings.
Yes.
So they're not saying, you do it, but I'm not going to.
That's right.
So connections,
make the connection. One thing you can do today is connect. There's your word for the day, Work Positive Nation. Connect. Sandy Geroux is my guest. The WOWplace.com is the website. Turn your workplace into a wow place is the book that you want to buy today. Sandy, is your book available at the WOWplace.com?
It is. There is a store, a WOWplace store that you can go to on that website, or you can get it at Amazon. I have on my website, I have both the Kindle and the physical versions that you can order. And if you order it from my website, well, that's the one I can sign for you. So if you'd like a signature, or a little happy greeting from me, then you can order it there and I'd be happy.
Wonderful. That's the wowplace.com. And that web address is in the show notes if you're walking the dog or on the Peloton or something like that right now. Yeah. By the way, I'm not getting a Peloton for mentioning them. At least I don't think I am. Should I say go to Peloton.com and say?
I don't think so.
Yeah, that would be a wow place kind of thing. Right? Turn your workplace into a wow place is the name of the book. The WOWplace.com is the website. Sandy, I'm assuming that on the WOWplace.com there's a contact form or something, because somebody's going to want to reach out to you and say, hey, Sandy, come speak to our group. Hey, Sandy, we're having a Zoom meeting. How about helping us out and learn more about the WOWplace rules, right?
Absolutely. There's a contact form there. You can tell me if you have a date for an engagement already, or if you just want me to come in or just get on the phone and talk to me. I'd be happy to do that.
Wonderful. Sandy, thank you for the gift of your time, your wisdom, and man, I've loved connecting with you today. Can we get together again sometime? Would that be cool?
I would love that. Yes, absolutely. I've had a blast here with you today. Joey, we are kindred spirits.
I'm feeling it. Yeah. Well, welcome to Work Positive Nation, and I'm glad to be a part of WOWplace Nation. So thanks so much, Sandy. You take good care.
You too.
Thank you for listening to the Work Positive Podcast with your host, executive coach, and culture architect, Dr. Joey Faucette. Please share this podcast with your friends who are small business leaders so they can create a positive work culture that increases their productivity and profits. Get your free 15-point Work Positive checklist to help you attract top talent and reduce team turnover. Download this checklist at workpositive.today/checklist. Remember, it pays to work positive.